From America's farm to Fort Capital and some of the richest farmland in the world, it's time for What's in Season with Micahel Marks.
Well, welcome to What's in Season with Micahel Marks. I am Micahel Marks, your produce man. What an exciting show we have for you today. When you think of September, you probably think of back to school. We are going to talk a little bit about back to school. But when you go down the produce aisle, you go out to your garden, you go to the farmer's market, you go to the produce market, tomatoes. It's all about tomatoes. It's one of the biggest months for homegrown tomatoes. So we're going to talk tomatoes. Plus, Mandy Bottoms is with us from Ag in the Classroom, and we're going to have a ladybug sandwich with tomatoes. Oh my goodness, that's going to be very exciting. Dr. Chelsea Zarkon is with us today. It is Alzheimer's Awareness Month in September, so we're going to talk about nutrition and Alzheimer's. And of course, Chef Adam Peckel will be with us today. One hot recipe and one cold recipe using what else? Tomatoes. Well, let's start tomatoes. When I first started in the produce industry, oh my goodness, more than 45 years ago, this was tomato section for me right here. These two, we had what we called gas green tomatoes and we had cherry tomatoes, and that was it. And then in the 1980s, we started getting something called a Roma tomato. Oh my goodness, and that was it. Now, check out the tomato section now today. Oh my goodness, look at all the tomatoes that you find in the produce section or at the farmer's market. It is unbelievable. It all started after the Roma tomato, with BC Hot House started creating these what they call on-the-vine tomatoes. And that just created a craze. People wanted more with tomatoes. And then we started getting these grape tomatoes and all of these different colored tomatoes. And then we started getting all of these weird tomatoes. And then, of course, we had all of the beautiful heirloom tomatoes. Oh my goodness, the heirloom tomatoes. So let's get this out of the way right away. Is the tomato a fruit or is it a vegetable? Well, back in 1883, we had a president, President Arthur Chester. He signed into act the Tariff Act, and that Tariff Act taxed all imported vegetables, but not fruit. So there was a guy by the name of John Nix. You have no idea who he is, but he had one of the biggest produce markets in New York at the time. And he imported a lot of tomatoes from Cuba and Costa Rica and Ecuador, and he imported all those tomatoes. He didn't realize he had to pay tax on them. Well, when the tax man came around, he filed a lawsuit in 1893 saying these are fruit, not a vegetable. Well, it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1893, and the Supreme Court admitted that botanically speaking, the tomato is indeed a fruit. My definition of a fruit, all fruits have seeds and ripen. Does a tomato have seeds? Yes. Do they ripen? Yes. So that's my definition of a fruit. Botanically speaking, they are indeed a fruit. However, the U.S. Supreme Court, in their wisdom, they said that because we use tomatoes in soups, salads, and sandwiches, we're now going to call them a vegetable. So they used the culinary aspect of the tomato. We don't use them in desserts normally. So that's why it's now considered a vegetable. So how do you store a tomato? This is muy importante. Where do you store your tomatoes? Do you store your tomatoes over in that refrigerator? That is tomato abuse. Please, never in a million years should you put your tomatoes in the refrigerator. Let me give you a secret. The tomato is a subtropical fruit. That's right, a subtropical fruit, just like the banana. Now, do you put your bananas in the refrigerator? No, you don't. You put your bananas out on the countertop to ripen. So how do you store the tomatoes? Keep them out on your countertop, out of direct sunlight. And I also try to keep mine covered with a nice clean kitchen cloth. Keep them covered. That way they don't dehydrate as much. Second thing about tomatoes, how in the world do you cut a tomato? Well, let me show you something. You should always use a serrated edge knife. Now, when was the last time that you sharpened your knives? Yes, probably when you got married and you got that new set of knives, and that was the last time they were sharp. They're probably not sharp anymore. So you use a serrated edge knife on your tomatoes, and that way they cut so nice. Of course, if you do have a super sharp knife, that can be used as well, but a serrated edge knife is really, really good on tomatoes. Now, the tomatoes originated in South America, in Peru, Galapagos Islands, in Chile, in Ecuador, and when the conquistadors went to South America, they took back gold. And one of the gold items they took back with them was, of course, the tomato. It was usually a gold-colored tomato. Now, sometime in Spain or Italy, over the next 100 years, that's when the tomato turned red. Oh my goodness, and now we have all of these beautiful tomatoes, absolutely gorgeous tomatoes. One final thing, when you slice your tomatoes, you slice them just before you use them. There is a chemical in a tomato called Z9. Z9 dissipates within 15 minutes. So just before you put the tomato on the burger, just before you put the tomato in your salad, that's when you slice them. Hey, don't go away. We have so much more coming up just for you.